I am starting this without Renee. Oh, I have no idea how to use these earbuds. Thanks to a generous grant from the Kansas Volunteer Commission, I am wearing my new fancy earbuds so that I can better communicate during Zoom meetings. This is my first experience with earbuds, and it's really weird. I don't know if I'm talking loud, if I'm talking normal, everything sounds muffled. I touch it and music starts. I don't know. So I hope this works, Daniel. I'm gonna keep them in as long as I can. I hope the sound quality is better this way. I don't frickin' know. Thank you to the Kansas Volunteer Commission for your generous donation. Okay. Okay, so welcome to United Way Connects. This is Roselyn, VP of Community Impact, and I'm here with Renee Kuhl with the Lawrence Community Shelter. She is the new executive director. Well, I guess you're not so new anymore. But would you please introduce yourself, Renee, and tell us a little bit about what the shelter does?
Hi, I'm Renee Kuhl, and like you said, Leah, I am the executive director of the Lawrence Community Shelter. I started in Labor Day, so I'm about like almost 8 months in at this point, and I know but it feels longer than that. We're in like coronavirus now, so. But so I manage our local emergency shelter for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. We typically serve between 500 and 700 people a year, between 90 and 120 individuals a night. Yeah, and so we're open 24/7, so people can access us by calling the shelter or just arriving at our front door, and we connect people to programs, services. We obviously meet their basic needs like laundry, giving them a place to receive mail, a place to store their belongings, and basically just troubleshoot with them the causes and reasons for their homelessness, and then try to help them identify solutions. That's our primary goal, is to help people establish a pathway to permanent housing.
Awesome, thank you. So life at the Lawrence Community Shelter was already probably a little bit chaotic, maybe just working with ambiguity all the time, but COVID has really changed things for you all. So I'm wondering if you can tell us how the pandemic has changed sort of the daily life and operations at LCS. How have you adapted? What changes have you made? And what have those changes meant to the homeless population in our county?
Yeah, we very rapidly, in beginning of March, as we started to understand what COVID-19 would mean to homeless communities, and specifically the group of people experiencing homelessness in Douglas County, we did have to adapt and make significant changes to our programming right away. I'm really lucky that I have a board and a team here at LCS that already understood homelessness as a public health crisis. And so we do frame housing as essential to people's ability to be well. And I think when we started to face the threat of the pandemic, that focus really became clear for us. And one of the first things we did was, begin to work with our partners on establishing rapid pathways to housing for as many people who were in the shelter at the time in beginning mid-March as we could. So we worked with Bert Nash, who had received a significant amount of rapid rehousing money, and we worked with Family Promise, who was holding a lot of our families on their caseload and who had some move out money to get first all of the families housed. That was about 8 to 10 families, 30 individuals that we within a month moved out and into their own apartments. And then a couple of those families moved in with relatives or friends, because we felt like the second thing that we knew would be an issue was being in an overcrowded shelter meant that folks were going to be exposed to transmission in the shelter in a really heightened way if we didn't significantly act to reduce the population. So we just felt like the most equitable thing was to refine our focus on housing and adopt an immediate goal around that. And so we've been pretty successful. We moved 52 people out. 40 of those folks have gone to permanent housing. 12 people have gone to live with families and friends. And what was really crucial for that was the availability of flexible rental assistance. Let me see, my battery was going to die, but yeah, so that was the first thing. And then the second thing, and that again achieved the two goals of eliminating overcrowding, severe overcrowding in the shelter. We're a big shelter, but people still use congregate bathrooms. They dine in a congregate setting. And then also we just felt it's the most equitable thing. Everyone should have the opportunity to engage in social distancing and mitigate their own risk for transmission, just like everyone else in the community is available to. And having your own apartment or home that you live in is the most important way that you're empowered to do that.
And we've seen COVID just sort of run through nursing homes and prisons and jails. And if you weren't moving people out, then you were afraid that LCS could become one of those kinds of situations where people are just infecting each other, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And in homeless shelters too. So we're still a pretty big shelter, and like nationally, we've seen a lot of homeless shelters deal with really significant severe outbreaks. Once a couple people test positive in your shelter, it's likely that, I mean, in some major shelters in Atlanta and Boston and San Francisco have shown that as many as, 70 or 80% of the people could end up being positive. And I feel really strongly that that's not a safe shelter, and that when people are homeless, if the only option that is available to them is one shelter in town, that shelter better be safe and a healthy place to be, because if it's not, then you don't really have any healthy options available to you. And then what we did was close down intake for a while. We put some social distancing rules in place for the remaining folks who were with us and asked people to limit their coming and going to only work or the doctor. And we've now relaxed those rules. So we're allowing people to go to the store. We now have enough masks. At that time, we didn't have any PPE. We didn't have any masks. So we were pretty strict with our rules. And we put a containment procedure in place where as staff, we're not only delivering services, but we're all pitching in and sanitizing and cleaning the facility all the time. Since then, we've gotten better equipped with PPE and we have masks. And we're requiring guests to wear masks in the facility, asking them to wear them when they leave, and providing those to guests. And we've started intaking slowly people back into the facility. So I'm hopeful that we'll operate at around 50 or 60 people per night by the end of the month, but it's just going to continue to be a slow process for us getting back there. We want to, just like all the other institutions or organizations in town, we're observing what's happening in the community with our COVID-19 numbers, and we'll just continue to kind of adapt as we go and play it day by day. But we want to operate at our true capacity, in terms of sheltering.
How have those changes been on the guests, like having to wear masks in the facility and things like that? How are your guests doing?
It's been really hard for them. We're dealing with folks who, several of them are elderly, and then they're high risk too for transmission. Yeah, and don't have health insurance. Several of them have severe behavioral health issues, or their barriers to housing are really high. They don't have income, and they might be dealing with substance use disorder or a history of substance use disorder. The group that kind of remained after a big push to put people on housing, and some people have just left on their own because those rules just really didn't work for them, are really people who are really vulnerable, and that's why they're still here. And it's still hard for them to continue to adapt to like wearing a mask all the time, and things like that are not the easiest. And the cloth masks are kind of annoying to wear for hours and hours on end. So as we get more surgical masks and accumulate more of those, we are giving people the surgical masks because those are just like lightweight and breathable and easier to wear. So and then we've kind of reorganized people in the facility so that they have more space to themselves. and they can really social distance. So it's just been a waterfall of changes, but we're still here and working our butts off. We were able to give staff hazard pay. The PPP program, the Small Business Administration made that possible for us to pay staff who are coming in, supplement their hourly wages with basically a hazard pay bonus. So I'm really, really happy that we were able to do that. Yeah, because it's just been staff have been so courageous and resilient. They steward their responsibility here with seriousness and with dignity and also with humor. And they've been so amazing. So that's super cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I share with everybody that I can that our nonprofit direct service providers are first responders, that when people think our first responders, typically what they're thinking of is nurses and doctors and police officers, but nonprofit folks like you all are on the front lines taking on not only the physical and health risks, but all that emotional labor that you put in, and that is heavy to carry. And you all show up with compassion every single day, and it is just so I am so humbled to watch you all. So thank you so much for you and your team for everything that you do. I'm gonna start crying.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. And we're just so grateful that the United Way is such a great partner, and you guys have been so supportive with your messaging and with your work to support us and provide us with resources, advocate for us, and I'm super proud of our community of homeless providers in Douglas County, because they're just such great professionals to partner with in a real way. I can reach out to Dana at Family Promise, or Megan at the Willow, or Matt at Burt Nash, and we all worked to establish a strategy that works for the whole population. And so I think that shows that maybe the silver lining for us is that this really was a test of our ability to work cooperatively. And I think that we totally have done that. And it's not been super easy or simple. And I know that I haven't been bright, cheery, and bushy-tailed every single day, but I'm so grateful that the people who are serving people experiencing homelessness in Lawrence and Douglas County are serious rock stars. We just keep keeping on. Yeah.
So Renee, one of the things that you mentioned was that one of the first strategies that you implemented was rapid rehousing. That's a term, along with housing first, that I think nonprofit folks throw around a lot. People may not understand exactly what that means. The strategy has really been shown effective in reducing homelessness. The housing first model was really first implemented on a national scale under the George W. Bush administration, but it showed a drastic decrease in homelessness even during a recession. But although housing first is an evidence-based strategy that's been shown to reduce homelessness and save communities thousands or millions of dollars, it continues to be misunderstood. It continues to be deprioritized as the local strategy. And what I hear a lot of in terms of pushback is, you're just going to give people a house, but I work hard for my housing and I have to go to work every day and pay my rent. How are you just going to give somebody a free house? So if you could share what is housing first and why does it work? Why should that be a strategy that we permanently adopt in our community?
So housing first, just in its social work definition, is really just a body of evidence. First started as a body of evidence that showed that housing is a prerequisite for recovery, specifically from behavioral health disorders. So that's kind of what it first established in the social work field, is that if you want people to recover from mental illness or substance use disorder, then their housing has to be assured. So if you're, for instance, if you're exiting people from treatment to the street, what we know from research is that they might have achieved sobriety for a period of time in a treatment center, but if they're not housed, the likelihood that they're going to remain in recovery is severely reduced. And then from there, I think what communities have shown through like establishing housing first programs and principles is that, again, like I said before, that housing is an important foundation of good health and well-being in the community. And that overturns a lot of our presumptions about people experiencing homelessness. So that's really what Housing First achieves, is it kind of disproves the notion that before someone becomes housed, that they have to get well first, and then it's appropriate to house them. What Housing First establishes is that we have to eliminate barriers to housing for people if we want them to get well. Wellness happens from a foundation of being housed. So there's a lot of tools in the Housing First toolbox that communities can use to just move people out of homelessness and into housing. And rapid rehousing is flexible rental assistance. It can be used to, again, like rapidly move people from the street or from a shelter into housing. And the pieces that need to be in place there really are good landlord relationships between providers and landlords, good case management for folks who are being placed into housing. Someone might engage with the case manager in a shelter setting for 90 days, if that's how long they're there. And they might need that length of case management after they've been housed. So you can monitor a person's progress and make sure that the flexible rental assistance that you're providing is actually going to bridge them to long-term housing stability. We've used rapid rehousing as a strategy in the COVID-19 pandemic as a community to get people off the street and really reduce or eliminate their risk of exposure to COVID-19. Even though if they're still going to work or going out and not engaging in social distancing, they still might be at risk of getting infected, but they're able to manage and mitigate that risk themselves in their own dwelling place. So the assistance we've provided is mostly security deposits and 1 to 3 months rent for folks. And I think been really successful as a community over the last 2 months in my staff members bringing me coffee.
Yay!
Okay. Yay! I'm going to totally pause my interview for that. Yay! But so one of the things that I think is really interesting, Leah, about the rapid rehousing effort that we've kind of launched over the last 8 weeks is it's really put to test this thing that I've heard since I came here, that Douglas County landlords are the reason why we have so much homelessness and that there's not enough affordable housing. And that's a huge driver of homelessness, and that landlord restrictions are a huge driver. Part of what we did was reach out and really make a concerted effort to really mine who the landlords are, try to engage as many as we could, just recruit them as partners with us to get people housed. And it's the first time since I've been here that I think we've really seriously engaged landlords. I think we found like tons of solutions. It's not been perfect. And I definitely know for a fact that there's not enough affordable housing to solve the housing instability or rent instability that exists in the county. But I don't know. I feel like there might be enough open units and willing landlords to deal with homelessness if people had enough support, and then that like we could make a serious dent in the homeless population with rental assistance and with landlord engagement and landlord education and things like that.
That's
At the end of yeah, but I come from Chicago, so I totally know what really harsh rental restrictions look like or housing discrimination looks like. And I'm not saying that we don't have that, but I'm saying that we can make a lot of progress simply by just reaching out and saying, hey, we're offering to put money in your pocket, and we've got people who want to rent, and we want to work with you and assist our clients in being good tenants for you. So I think we've seen like really cool progress happen on that side of it, and kind of put to test the assumption that there's not enough landlords and there's not enough units. And so I'm glad that we pushed on that and kind of found that we can make a lot of progress. We just have to make that a part of our practice. Does that make sense?
really great. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that you said that. I think a message of unity is obviously fundamental to the United Way message, and that doesn't mean building relationships where they don't make sense or
right,
complying
right.
with policies that are unjust or oppressive. But it's amazing what can happen when you just build authentic relationships with people and try and understand what motivates people. And that I think from my experience, most people in this community really are compassionate, caring people and want to do what's best for the community. And they're also worried about their families and have that to balance as well. I
Yeah.
appreciate the amazing relationship building work that you're doing. And I think that that'll really open up possibilities for a whole community based on that work. Nobody likes to be demonized.
Yeah, right. And we have some really cool examples of, like, for instance, top to bottom property management at the Jayhawk Trailer Park hired a new property manager. She's super cool and has gone in and fixed up a lot of the trailers and made them really accessible to people who are exiting homelessness.
Good.
And has worked with people and been, like, really accommodating. And then our guests are just tickled to go into their own trailer and then also have neighbors and be in a community space. I think some also housing options that work for low income sometimes get overlooked in our, like, housing policy. We're cool with, like, building more trailers or something, that works for people.
Absolutely. Or
Or
what Tennis
yeah.
Homeowners is doing with the tiny houses.
Yes, totally, totally. Those options are awesome, and just are there landlord partners that we're overlooking? And, like, how can we support really accommodating property managers or housing property providers? I almost want to call them housing providers. I mean, that's what they are. They're, who are we missing? And this has been a really great experience for me to kind of get to know who those stakeholders are in the community and build those relationships.
That's awesome. Like I alluded to before, one of the things that I hear a lot about people experiencing homelessness in general, but particularly it gets amplified when people get housed with the support of the community, is those people are lazy, they're undeserving, they're not working hard, they're loafing off the system. And we have all of these stereotypes and misconceptions about how people end up homeless, why they remain homeless. And I'm wondering if you can help to shed some humanity to that story and maybe share a story about how one of your guests ended up homeless, or somebody that you've worked with. In general, what you want people to know about people experiencing homelessness.
I I have, like, a funny thing that I say about this, but most of the lazy people in our community live in homes. Like the vast majority of the lazy people.
Right.
You know, you're right. Those are just people have, like, it's like a unique confluence of factors that render people homeless. And it's not at all have to do with a character defect. And it's not necessarily a foregone outcome of any behavioral health problem either. Most of the people who are addicted to substances in our community are housed. You know, the vast majority, 99% of the people who are struggling with substance use in our community are housed right now. So it's not a foregone conclusion that struggling with behavioral health issues or having character flaws or something is, like, going to lead to homelessness. For me, it's like a material problem. It's a problem of poverty and wellness. And everybody who experiences homelessness in our community is totally unique, and their stories are unique. A lot of them have histories of trauma in their background. We have a lot of folks who have disabilities, have chronic health issues, in addition to a behavioral health issue. In our family program, it's mostly women with young children, single moms with young children who enter our program. They might be suddenly homeless after a family unit breakup or breakdown, or they might be fleeing domestic violence, and they're trying to manage a transition to a single income household. They just fall into homelessness. that's a really common story in the family program. For our single adults in our program, we have a pretty high rate of recidivism. So in our community, we've got a lot of people who are on the downslope towards establishing a history of chronic homelessness, because people in our community are becoming homeless again and again, or the periods of time that they're homeless are extended way too long. We have 30% in 2019, a 30% recidivism rate from the past 2 years. So 30% of the people that we served in 2019 had been a previous guest of the shelter in 2017 or 2018. So that's a pretty high recidivism rate in a recent episode of homelessness. But we do a lot to try to just help people figure out where the resources are and lock into the right established community resource so that they can stay housed for the long term. There's so many examples. We do have one example of a woman who was staying with us when I started, whose family is in Kansas City and she lives here in Lawrence. She'd been here for a few months, and it was really just a matter of getting her connected to her voucher, getting her on her income established on SSI, getting a Section 8 voucher, and then just getting her on her way. And like we really wanted her to leave the shelter sooner instead of wait here for a Section 8 voucher to come through. We really don't want people to be homeless for many months because they're waiting for theirs. We helped her get into a trailer with some roommates, and she was there for a couple months, and then she got her voucher and she was able to get her own apartment, and she continued to come back here and volunteer doing laundry, which was really awesome. So
Awesome.
yeah, which was really, really sweet. And now I don't see her anymore because of coronavirus, but she's a really great example. I have lots of single moms over the last 6 months who have been super courageous and got housed. We had a family of 7 who was staying here with us. All the assistance we were able to braid together in the COVID-19 moment, we were able to get them into their own trailer and weave together a lot of assistance for them, set them up with case management from Family Promise. So we're really hopeful that they'll be able to stay housed. So those are some of the examples that usually it's just if people's income is just not enough, like if they're just on SSI or SSDI, sometimes finding an apartment who will rent to people is not going to work. Landlords on a typical basis won't accept people, but sometimes if you can, rapid rehousing money can be a great bridge for that person, because if you can get them to establish a good history with the landlord, then they can continue on. And sometimes it might be a behavioral health issue that is preventing someone from maintaining income, or we have folks who are younger, like in their 20s and 30s, who are dealing with severe behavioral health issues. And so getting them connected to the right services and asking them, okay, what's your goal? Like, what's going to motivate you to achieve stability long term? And so sometimes for them, it's not necessarily getting them on disability, but helping them establish like a career path. So connecting them to the right resources in the community for that. And that's where being a low barrier shelter is really important, so that we don't require people to be in recovery to stay here. You can start the path to stability from here. So we've helped some folks with that. We've exited some people who'd been here for a long time to housing over the last 6 months. And that's just for us really working with our partners really closely, because they want to have a win too. So if we all work together and we find the right case manager at Burt Nash for someone and then get them linked to rental assistance in the right apartment, then they can continue to receive that support at Burt Nash after they're housed. And Burt Nash has a lot of great resources for people over the long term that'll help them stay stable. And so that's kind of what we focused on.
That's awesome. Thank you, Renee. So
Yeah.
One last question as you enjoy your delicious coffee.
Yeah.
So what would you like our community to do about homelessness? How can the community support you, support homelessness prevention? What would you like to see? If you could do one call to action, what would it be?
Right now, it's so hard right now because everyone's at home. And I know that people are eager to do something. I know people are really concerned about like the economic situation we're in. And is that going to mean more people become homeless? And maybe people are worried about their own precarity. And so typically I love to tell people, like, get in touch with our volunteer manager and, come engage with people experiencing homelessness or engage with the shelter. And that's a little tricky right now. And I hope in the next month we'll be able to have a lot more community engagement happening on site. That's still the case. Like, you can still donate goods or volunteer your time in some capacity. So get in touch with Megan. And then, if you've got any, like, if you can give, right now is a great time to give. I know it's a hard time for so many folks. And then it's a hard time for nonprofits too, because we're trying to expand what we do, even as we're also facing a shrinking economy. So this is just such an important time to give. And if you can give to one of the nonprofits that are helping in an emergency services capacity, whether it's like Just Food, who's our amazing food bank, or us or another one of the homeless service providers, this is just such a great time to do that. Okay, that's like two things. A third thing would be follow us on Facebook so you can keep up with what we're doing. And then we're giving lots of updates and stuff on social media. So at least just keep in touch with us and get to know what we're doing and what our approach is. And we'll have ways coming weeks and months for people to come on board or come out to the shelter or engage in a really meaningful way.
Awesome. And do you want to give us your website?
Yeah, it's www.lawrenceshelter.org.
Thank you so much for your time, Renee. Reach out to Renee and her team if you're interested in volunteering and donating. And if you need help, you can always call 211 to get a list of local resources. Renee, thank you so much for your time. You're a freaking rock star, and our community is so lucky to have you.
Thanks,
so
Leah.
You.
I can't wait till we can go get a glass of wine or something.
Me too. I know we were gonna get a drink before all this happened, so it'll be
so
even more
crazy.
special now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you, friend.